Do angels and demons exist? They do not, at least not in the biblical sense. But are they angels and demons walking on earth? Yes. And I'm going to use those terms incredibly loosely because I don't want you to start thinking Bible and religion. There's nothing to do with that. I'm just using those terms because those are the terms that most people understand and know. Let me back up for a second. When somebody dies, their soul lifts out of their body. And there's two choices for them. They can hang out around on earth for a little bit as a soul, or they can cross into their light and go into their afterlife. Let's go from the premises that we are made out of energy. Our entire body is made out of those little atoms that are energy. Our soul that lives inside the body gets to be aligned with our human frequencies as long as it is in the body. Once it steps outside of the body, it no longer is attached to human frequencies. And so to be able to stay on earth, it has to be able to find a way to retain human frequencies. Otherwise, its frequency would shift and it would be more aligned with what lies on the afterlife, what lies in the other dimension. If you're interested in the steps of the afterlife, I have a video that you can watch that is called What Happens After You Die. But I digress. Let's come back to right now. Let's say the soul has stepped out of the body and it has decided, I feel like it's too soon. I'm not ready to go yet. I just wanted more time and I want to stay here. Not recommended. But let's say this is what happens. To be able to retain its strength, it's going to have to find a way of interacting with the human world. The first couple of weeks after death, it's at its strongest, and eventually that would fade. This is why it's recommended for them to go into the light. And no, it's not a trap, by the way. I also have a video regarding this. That said, what should a soul do? Well, the best way for them to continue to gain strength is to be able to make us react to certain things. And so emotions are filled with energy. Emotions are packed with fuel for souls that are earthbound, aka ghost. And so when we react to something, we fuel them. If they're around and if they have created this. This is why I always tell people, if you feel like you have a spirit around you, don't react. They'll go away because you will become not as important. Now, let's go a little further with that. This is when we get into the demons and angel piece of it. But let's say that somebody, when they were alive, were just not a really good person. They had really negative character traits. They were abusive and mean and just plainly not the best. And that person, that soul does not cross over. Eventually, the longer it stays on earth, the more this character traits they had that was negative is going to amplify. It's going to become worse and worse and worse. And they're going to start morphing from the shape they were right after death into a shape that looks almost demonic. And that takes decades and centuries for them to get there. So don't think that, if you had an uncle that passed that was not the kindest person and you feel like that uncle hasn't crossed, don't think that they're turning into something horrible right off the bat, especially if they've only been gone for a few years. It takes decades for them to turn into that. But this is what will happen eventually, because they will get better at irritating people, at getting people to just have a burst of emotions around them. And often that emotion will be anger or sadness. And the more they can fuel themselves off that emotion, the stronger they get. But also, that amplifies the character traits they had before. This is why sometimes people can say, I have seen demons. Yes, it's just a word. It's just a soul that has stayed too long on this earth after death and should have crossed over. And it's a soul that has gone darker and darker and darker. It did not come from the pit of hell. Hell, like a heaven, is something that's invented to control people. It's not real. They were once humans like you and I. But the beauty about this is the same thing applies to what we might call angels. So let's say you had this amazing aunt that you love dearly and who was such a kind human being. Let's say that aunt passes and that aunt decides, too soon, I was not ready. I just want to stick around. And she does. And she sticks around for a long time. Eventually the same thing is going to happen. Those character traits she had are going to become more amplified. And if she was really that good and that kind and that helpful and that open-hearted, those qualities will just become more and more and more. And this is why sometimes we say, there are angels on earth, because they truly are. Those are the souls of the people that chose not to cross after death, and whose goodness qualities have become more and more amplified. And so if somebody was incredibly good, they would become even better. Now, I don't recommend, I recommend for souls to cross no matter what. But if that's the case, that is where you can say, I swear to God, I have seen angels on earth. And the same thing as souls that are really dark, those souls will morph into something that is brighter, that is lighter, that has more of a really incredible aura that sometimes can be perceived as wings. They're not. They're not coming from heaven. Again, as I said, heaven and hell are things that are made up. But their frequencies have grown so much. And so, yes, they can do a lot of good on this earth. And the emotions that you will feel around them are happiness and joy and love. And they feed off those emotions to remain strong and be able to do what they chose to do by staying here. That is what I mean when I said demons and angels. Just words. All right. Any questions, please let me know. If you want to hear a couple of stories about some of my experiences coming across some of those souls, let me know, and I will make a video about that. Mallory, psychic medium. I bring more grounded approach to the psychic world.